Oh, God. I'm back. This time it's even longer. That's what she said. I already know what you're thinking, and you're welcome. I know your time is precious, so let's spend 5 days driving halfway across the country with 3 cats in the back seat. Let's go to California. My friend landed a pretty sweet job at a winery in California, so naturally there was no way I was going to pass up the opportunity to tag along on this road trip. The path that we had kind of drawn for ourselves was going to cut through a number of places that I've been dying to revisit or visit. The caveat was that her cats, all 3 of them, would be taking up the entire back seat. So we thought it'd be best to break up the 1,800-mile drive from Austin, Texas to Healdsburg, California into chunks. In my last video, I had made the statement that the drive from Austin to Albuquerque was the worst fucking drive in America. This is that drive. From Austin to Albuquerque is 11 hours straight through some of the most boring scenery imaginable, just endlessly featureless and flat. However, if you're paying attention, you can find some pretty interesting things in some of these forgotten places. There was so much shit packed into that little car that I had to almost take everything out of it just to get my camera and load some film every single stop. The county commissioner, whose office was a literal sheet metal barn right across the street, stopped to see if we needed help. He was a nice guy. There are a few times on this trip in which I made us stop and turn around because I wanted to take a picture. And I'm positive that added hours to our trip.
Kind of freaky.
Places like this, these old, forgotten, neglected towns, pepper rural areas of the South, as I'm sure they do everywhere else. There's a kind of haunting charm to them. And then thinking about it, my mind goes crazy. Like, I have 100 questions. Like, who used to eat at this cafe? And then I think like, okay, well, it was probably an old couple. He wore overalls and had that snotty handkerchief thing that old guys do hanging out of his pocket. And she wore gold tinted glasses and smoked cigarettes the whole time. But really, like, what was the last meal served here? And where did everybody go? I also said in my last video that I never needed to take another photograph of a wind turbine ever again. And I lied, but for real, I'm done with it. These wind turbines pepper the West Texas landscape. We drove for hours and they swallowed the horizon. When I'm not by myself, I don't like feeling like I'm an imposition on those that I'm traveling with. I don't want to feel like my wants are important. We have a goal on this trip, and that is to make it to California as fast as humanly possible. And I don't want to speak up and say, I want to stop and take a picture. But when you pass a mural like this, I don't care what you want. Some film stocks are forgiving. You can under or overexpose, sometimes substantially, and your film can still come out looking pretty good. There are other film stocks that just can't be bothered to cooperate. Ektar is one of those stocks. I'm very much a practitioner of measuring twice, cutting once, but I also have a bad habit of getting a really good light meter reading, composing my image, and then realizing I still have my dark slide in and I have to repeat that entire process over.
Got it. Pretty sure I know what you're trying to do.
When you've been on the road for hours, let alone days, you've kind of said everything you need to say. But then when you hit construction in the middle of nowhere, you sit in silence for what feels like an eternity. This guy on the motorcycle behind us, I'm pretty sure he was seeing the same dark clouds as we were. They were unavoidable. The closer we got to Albuquerque, the more pockets of rain we kept hitting. And then about an hour outside Albuquerque, I kept seeing these really big storm clouds kind of rise and fall over the horizon. I really wanted to stop and take a picture, but there was no place to pull over until I saw an exit and prolonged our time stuck in a car with 3 cats that much longer. One thing I'm not the best at is determining my exposure in a difficult lighting scenario. I'm not shooting digital, so I can't just fire off 100 frames and pick my favorite one. I've got to make an informed decision because film is expensive and it cuts into my wine budget. I also still had Ektar loaded, so that didn't help. I'm not overly thrilled with this image, but I don't hate it yet. Actually, I'm kind of disappointed with it. I can often get wrapped up in thinking about how incredible something looks as I'm photographing it, but then be very disappointed with how it turned out. 99% of the time, it's because I fucked up. The next day, we made our way from Albuquerque to Sedona, Arizona. I've only been once before, and it was on a road trip passing through years ago. My friends say that this is their favorite place on earth, which is kind of a bummer considering how much it rained the entire time we were there. Go figure, the sun came out just as we were leaving.
That would be awesome. This is a better video than I got the other day because I was on the other side and your arms were in the way. And I did not mean to rhyme that. I really didn't.
This is one of those happy accident stops. It's hard to tell what the view is going to look like when you get there because the sign on the road just says overlook.
Morning.
I tried my hand for the first time at Cinestill's black and white stock, and I kind of love it. This scenic turnout is on the north end of Sedona, headed up towards Flagstaff. If you ever find yourself passing through, you should stop. It may not seem like much on here, but trust me, the other side of this stone wall was straight down, pretty damn far. The clouds kept dancing in front of the sun, so getting a quick and accurate light meter reading was pissing me off. My luck on destination or travel or whatever you want to call it, photography, is always kind of a crapshoot. I watch the weather, plan and pack accordingly, and even though there won't be a cloud in the sky, somehow the rain always finds me. The closer we were getting to the Grand Canyon, the rain chances kept going up and my attitude kept going down. Even when we were parking, there was a little bit of sun poking through the clouds, but I could still feel it rain on my head. Film cameras and water do not mix. To say the least, I was not a happy camper. But when we were making our way closer, I mean, you couldn't have asked for more.
Actually, I'm pretty good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I've only been here once on a road trip years ago with my friend, and it rained almost the whole time. This time felt more like I was seeing it for the very first time. You could come here every day for the rest of your life and still find something new to see.
Oh.
Don't get bad.
This is one of those places that when you finally get the opportunity to experience it, it just kind of leaves the most beautiful scar. So much can be said about how breathtaking and powerful this place is, but I don't have the vocabulary. Just go see it for yourself. I was lucky enough to eavesdrop on an argument between a mom and her kid who clearly didn't want to be there because he'd rather be playing Minecraft.
Well, I don't have an answer for you.
I feel pretty strongly that the Grand Canyon doesn't put up fences because people who play stupid games tend to win stupid prizes, myself included. I'm not a huge fan of heights, but when I'm focused on trying to compose a shot, I'm not paying attention to things like how many seconds am I going to be live before I hit the bottom of the canyon. More often than not, you can view the rocks that jet out from an angle, and as long as it's not wafer thin, just don't be a dumbass. Just like my imagination wanders when we found that old abandoned cafe on day one of the road trip, it does the same thing here. Like, what did this look like before we were here, before we found it? And yes, I'm putting we in quotations. Who was the first person to find this? Did they look at it the same way I do? Will people still appreciate things like this in the future? Why didn't my parents bring us here when we were kids? It was time to get back out on the road again, this time from Sedona to Joshua Tree, California. Years ago, I helped a friend move from Dallas to Los Angeles. She flew, and I offered to drive her car because I've never seen that part of the country before, and I wanted to take pictures. There are a number of things I remember quite vividly from that drive. One such place is this makeshift totem pole of random license plates and signs just outside the middle of nowhere, California. The last stop that we had penciled in was a stop that I just missed on that road trip years ago. Then I only had enough time to buy my ticket into the park before the sunset, so I didn't get to see jack shit. This time I lucked out. Even though I lucked out with the timing, I didn't really luck out with the timing. I wasn't feeling the sunlight at this time of day. It was still too high in the sky to be qualified as good light for me anyway. The other thing, kind of a good problem, I suppose, is that every single tree looks different. You could wander 4 hours looking for a tree that visually has a little bit more to offer than the one that you just passed. So how do you choose which one to dedicate one of your only 10 frames of film for? Remember, film ain't cheap, and I like my wine. The last leg of the trip was about the absolute worst. We had 13 hours straight to go from Joshua Tree to Healdsburg, California. But when you're stuck in a car for 5 days with 3 cats and you can't lay your seat back, your arms and your shoulders and your back, you just kind of feel like the Tin Man, rusted and frozen. I made my friend drive the last 4 hours because it was either that or just shoot me and leave me in a ditch because I was so done. But we arrived finally, very late, passed out, and woke up to this little slice of heaven on earth. I was lucky enough to be here just before harvest when all the grapes are still in the vines. These are Pinot Noir. Also on the property was this little orchard of fig and pear trees. I don't really care for either one myself, but just up by the house was this little apple tree that was much more my style. So the whole reason for this road trip was because my friend landed a really good job at a winery in California. Since Ethan wasn't on this road trip to man the camera, I mean, they do say good help is hard to find.
Welcome to my crib.
Okay. So did you hear what I said?
This place is surreal. Acres of vines completely surrounding this home, with the Russian River a literal stone's throw away. It's actually right at the end of the vineyard. When you should have fought harder with a coyote. This is the kind of place, setting, environment, whatever you want to call it, that reminds me very much of spending summers at my grandparents' farm in Washington when I was a kid. After we'd eat breakfast, we generally weren't allowed back into the house until dinner time. But my brother and I were really never that bent out of shape about being forced to be outside. There's so much trouble to cause, but such a childhood to actually live. It's also incredibly peaceful, but I think this level of peace or isolation might make a lot of people uncomfortable. I can't get enough of it. I think the only thing better for me would be moving someplace like New Zealand or Iceland or a lighthouse. This is also the kind of place that makes you really feel like one of those dads who's got to be at the airport like 6 hours early, which I kind of am. But waking up before sunrise to drink my coffee outside in September and actually need a blanket because it was a little chilly, it's pretty hard to beat. I wanted to take a couple portraits of my friend to celebrate this new chapter of her life. I know how diligent she's been on this, and I've never got to take a portrait in a vineyard before, so check that off my list.
Say hi.
I also think she just wanted to show off her boots. Don't look at me. Look back out where you're supposed to. On the day before my last day in California, we took the hour-long drive out to the ocean. On the way, I didn't realize that we actually got to drive through these massive redwood forests. You actually start to notice that the trees are really, really big. I could tell we were getting close to the ocean because I could see that marine layer of fog. Rolled the window down and took in one of the greatest smells on earth. Once I'd had my fill of seagulls, we wandered around Sonoma Coast State Park. As you're walking, these massive rock formations offshore start to peer through the fog until I was distracted by these rock climbers who kept getting in my shot. I don't understand how someone could not fall in love with a place like this. I mean, it has everything you could ever want. Cold, fog, rain, sun sometimes, but not a lot, wine. We started making our way back past these mountain goat people who were still in my shot. And even though you're literally at sea level, it's not so much a hike as it is a gradual uphill stroll, but oh my God, it is deceptively far. Okay, hurry up. Oh my God. That garbage truck hit a power pole last week and knocked out all that power. Just fucking idiot.